Hi friends, I want to introduce you to the American artist named Charley Harper. Charley Harper is a Cincinnati-based artist who is most famous for his paintings of wildlife. Growing up on a farm in West Virginia, Charley Harper just loved animals. He became fascinated by them and they became the subject of his artwork. He loved particularly painting deer and raccoons and lots of birds. He used flat shapes and lines and didn't focus too much on tiny details, but instead the shape of the animals. Today, we are going to make a cute little fawn inspired by Charley Harper. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil or a Sharpie. First, you're going to find the middle of your paper and you're going to slide your finger over to draw a circle for the nose. If at any point I go too fast, please pause this video. Once you draw your circle for a nose that's about the size of a quarter, you can go ahead and color it in. Now I'm going to draw a small little box right above the nose for the little white patch right above his nose on my deer. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the face of my fawn. Our fawn is going to be symmetrical, which means he's the same on both sides. His face is going to be the same on both sides. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line on one side, and then I like to use my finger to air draw or finger draw first so I can visualize my line. Go ahead and draw both of those lines. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the eyes of my fawn. I'm going to bring a diagonal line going in. I like to do one on one side, go to the other side and do the same thing, but opposite. And then I'm going to bring that line back out. Now I'm going to make another line that is parallel to the first line on top. Parallel means they're going in the same direction, and bring that line down just a tiny bit. Now I'm going to do the eyes of my fawn. First I'm going to close off my lines at the top, and then I'm going to do a curved line right on the edge for my eyes. If you want to make a little highlight, you can. This is the light reflecting in the eyes. And then also you can make a little bottom lid, the bottom eyelid for my deer. Go ahead and color in the eye, everything except for that shine and the bottom lid. Deer have really long eyelashes to protect their eyes from dust, so go ahead and give your fawn some lashes. Now I'm going to do the top of my head and definitely draw a few lines with your finger first. Visualize that arch or that rainbow and go ahead and cap off your fawn's head on top. Fawn have really big ears. Now I don't quite have enough room on my left side, but I'm going to start on my right side, draw a nice big ear with a big arch, and then I'm going to go ahead and close it off to make like a raindrop shape. If you have room on the other side, you might want to measure that ear and slide it over so you're drawing the same exact size. Now, I don't have room on my left, so I'm going to let it go off the page. See how I'm measuring? It would look really weird if I made a really skinny, tiny ear on one side and then a big ear on the right. So if it looks like it's not going to fit, just let it go off the page. That's always best. Now I'm going to start to make the body of my fawn. I'm going to draw a diagonal line from the top of the head up, pause, and then visualize the next line here. We're going to do a curved line for the round of the back. Visualize it, curve, pause, and then I'm going to draw another bigger line going down. Definitely use your finger or draw in pencil first if you're a little bit nervous. Now my deer is sleeping or kind of cozied up in a meadow, and his little legs are tucked underneath his face. So we're going to draw two parallel lines on the left side and close it off with a box, and then draw another line for the hoof of your fawn. And let's go ahead and color in that hoof. because my fawn's legs are kind of crossed, I'm going to draw, this is the elbow of the other leg. So draw a nice big curve under the eye. And now I'm going to draw the elbow, or the longer part of the leg from my first leg that I drew. So kind of make sure that they are the same size and they could be connecting. What we're doing is overlapping. We're making it look like the head of our fawn is resting over top of this leg. So it's overlapping. I'm going to draw a parallel line, set of lines on top. This is to connect the other leg. Now I'm going to go ahead and connect the body to the legs to finish it off. And I was just going through and touching up a few lines. It's okay if you make a mistake, you can always fix it. Let's sneak a little tail in there. It's gonna be kind of like a little crescent shape, overlapping a bit. And then I drew another line for the underside of my deer, the white part. Baby deer or fawn have spots on their back, or kind of like their rump area. So we're gonna draw a few spots there. You can make them round. I'm kind of making them like a mix between a square and a circle. I'm drawing squarish, but with rounded edges. So add those spots. That can be different sizes. They do not have to all be the same size. Okay. Now I'm all done with my drawing. Let's get coloring. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab either oil pastels, which is what I'm using, or crayons. Either one work. You do want to make sure that is something that is wax based, because we're going to be doing a wax resist. So what I did is I went ahead and pulled out a few of the colors that I think would go well with my deer: browns, tans, and some white. So I'm going to take my white first, and I'm going to color in everything I want to stay white. So I want my spots on my fawn to stay white. So I'm going to color them nice and hard with my white oil pastel or your white crayon. If you don't have a white crayon or oil pastel, you can just leave it. We just have to be very careful when you go do the next step that you don't paint over it. This way it's going to keep it white. I drew a little line. It's hard to see, but I drew a little line kind of dividing up my ear, and I colored the bottom half white. This is like the inside. I'm coloring the highlight. I'm coloring the top of the nose. I'm coloring the shine on the nose, and also the underside of the tail. Now, I'm going to add some texture. Texture is an element of art. It means the way something feels. We know deer are covered in fur, so it would look kind of boring if we left it flat. So we're going to add a few little short lines just to add some texture. I'm adding texture with my brown oil pastel. I'm not coloring it in, but I'm just adding kind of like some dashed lines. You could work around the edges if you want to. You can make some in the middle. It's just to add a little bit of visual interest to our deer. So using my brown, I'm adding some of those lines. You can go ahead and do that now. Okay, friends, now we're going to do some painting. You could either use a paint set of watercolors that you have at your house, or I'm going to teach you how to turn regular markers into paint. All you need is a sheet of aluminum foil, some water, a paintbrush, and washable markers. Mr. Sketch, Crayola, whatever is washable. Sharpie is not going to work for this. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a few of your colors, like brown for our deer, and you're going to color a little swatch on the foil. I bet you can guess what we're going to do with this. I'm just putting some browns, some warm colors, maybe some yellows, oranges. You can really put whatever colors you want, but I'm just going to start with these for now. So I'm going to take my paintbrush. I'm going to just make my little swatch a little bit smaller just so you can see it and so it fits on my paper. And I'm going to take my brush, once I get my workspace figured out here, There we go. I can fit everything. Finally. Now I'm going to grab my brush, add some water, and just rubbing it on top of the marker, I am now activating it to become a paint. So I'm just kind of like creating watercolor with the ink of the marker. Now I'm kind of mixing some browns, yellows, and oranges just to give myself some variety with my brown. I could do it all one shade of brown. That would be totally fine. But you can mix if you want to. Now, if you need to add more marker, definitely do not color on top of the wet area. You're going to want to move to a dry area, make a new swatch, and then you can continue painting. If it seems a little bit light, you could always let it dry and then add another layer on top. Do you see how our white and our lines are shining through? That's because the water from our brush and the wax are basically fighting each other. The wax is saying, hey, don't stick to me, so it's pushing through. Now, if you do have your own set of paint, you can totally use paint too. So I'm just showing you how both look. I'm using washable watercolors. Every time you go to add some paint to your brush, definitely make sure you're going into your water. You want to keep your brush nice and wet. Give it a drink. We never want to see scratching lines on our picture. We want our brush to be nice and wet. Remember, watercolor, water first. Lots and lots of water. So I'm finishing painting my fawn, making sure I'm getting all my peekaboos. Okay, I'm just kind of going over some of the little areas that I maybe didn't think were dark enough. But again, you do not have to use paint and marker. You can just pick one. But the marker trick is a super fun one, especially if you don't have paint at your house. Now, let's go ahead and add a background to our fawn. Now, Mrs. Eddington made a little oopsie doopsie right here. I went ahead and started with my oil pastel, but that's not a good idea. You want to start with a marker first, or else I'm going to ruin my marker if I start with oil pastel. So grab your markers, maybe some greens, some yellows, some blues. Think about all the colors you would see if a fawn was kind of resting in a meadow or a grassy area. You're just going to draw some lines going out, maybe a few little pieces of wheat. I'm adding just a few different varieties of greens. And I'm just kind of making them start on the outside. Now, once I'm done with my marker, I can add some more lines with oil pastel or crayon. So I'm going over the marker now. So like I said, don't do what I did. Start with your marker, then add some crayon. And you guessed it, we're actually going to go ahead and paint again. But this time I only need water. Because I have marker on my paper and because I know that it is washable, it's going to be activated when I touch it with water. It's going to turn to paint. So all I'm doing is I'm just taking my paintbrush and my water and I'm just gently painting over top of my lines. And what that's doing is it's making the marker bleed. That sounds kind of a weird word, but basically it's when the ink in the marker starts to activate and spread. It's called the marker is bleeding. And that's going to give us a really cool look, like a watercolor look for the background of our deer. Oh my goodness, I am loving this little cutie. If you want to add some paint or other colors, you can always go back in. I love like really awesome watermarks when I do watercolors. I add a lot of water so I can see that when it dries. All right, I'm just cleaning up my work area and I am gonna hang my beautiful deer for everyone to see. Enjoy.